On May 31st, thousands of San Diegans gathered in downtown San Diego to protest the killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. That afternoon and evening, police declared an unlawful assembly and used tear gas, stun grenades, and pepper balls to disperse the crowds. Protesters said that escalated an otherwise peaceful demonstration, while police say it was necessary to secure the area. Either way, it was an expensive day for city taxpayers. In the following days and weeks, police racked up more than 100,000 hours of overtime responding to protests. By mid-June, SDPD had blown past its overtime budget by more than $11 million, and the overspending is not a fluke. A KPBS review of city budgets and financial reports found SDPD has spent beyond its overtime budget in all of the past 10 fiscal years. Together, the decade of overspending totals more than $61 million.
Our office has raised concerns with police overtime exceeding budgeted levels quite consistently.
Baku Patel is a fiscal and policy analyst with the Independent Budget Analyst's Office.
All departments have a responsibility to spend within their budget, including the police department. Police department is a little unique because especially the use of overtime, if there's an emergency or a public safety issue that needs to be addressed, typically that's done through overtime.
Some overtime pay is also mandatory. Officers are guaranteed overtime when they work on holidays, for example, or have to appear in court. But the biggest portion of the police overtime budget is discretionary, when police captains allow officers to work beyond their regular 8 hours.
We have to be honest about where the desire for policing comes from.
Kira Green is executive director of the progressive think tank Center on Policy Initiatives. Police have justified extending shifts into overtime by saying the department is understaffed. Green disagrees and says the use of overtime reflects the over-policing of some San Diego neighborhoods.
It's always the case that policing is racialized. And so as this city has become more people of color, we've heard a call for more policing. That's not going to solve our problems. It actually is our problem. It is, if you talk to communities of color about whether police make them feel safe, that's not what you hear.
Green says SDPD's consistent overspending on overtime could mean one of two things. Either all the mayors and police chiefs over the past decade have been really bad at predicting how much the department would need to spend on overtime, or
what we think is more true is that this is an intentional decision not to be upfront about the cost that we're putting into policing and to do at the front end of the budget cuts in all kinds of programs under the argument that there's not enough money, and then on the back end of the budget to put that money back into policing.
SDPD declined our request for an interview and refused to respond to written questions about overtime spending. Council President Georgette Gomez says the police budget does need more scrutiny. To that end, she and Councilmember Monica Montgomery commissioned a deep dive report into police spending so the council can find areas to cut responsibly.
So when we are having the budget discussion and the budget allocations, we can actually make decisions based on that information versus when we're in official budget hearings. It makes it hard because a lot of the information is coming at us very, very quickly, but also at times very late.
Despite a flood of calls to cut the police budget, council members last month approved Mayor Kevin Faulconer's proposal to increase it by about 5% to $566 million. The police overtime budget also went up to about $34 million. But in an effort to crack down on overspending, the council is also requiring SDPD to provide a detailed account of overtime use as soon as half of the budget is exhausted. Councilmember Chris Ward, who cast the only vote against the budget, says this is the level of oversight needed right now.
And I think that what you're hearing from many council representatives is an increased interest in engaging directly with police operations and with the police budget itself to be a little more transparent and clear about what it is we're doing, how we're spending it, and what other alternatives might be out there for consideration.
The deep dive report on SDPD's budget is expected sometime in the late summer or fall. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.